Star Wars fans, The Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 2 is here, and it's jam-packed with action, Easter eggs, and hints at what's to come for the show. Like, there is major foreshadowing for something really crazy that we all think is going to happen at the end of the season, and it has to do with Bo-Katan getting the Darksaber back and possibly even being the ruler of Mandalore once again. I want to first break down everything that happens in this episode, including all the Easter eggs and fun things that you probably missed, and then I want to dive heavily into what is implied in this episode about the Darksaber, Bo-Katan, and Din Djarin. So smash gosh dang like on this video and let's get into what actually happened in this episode. The episode begins on Tatooine, where we see a bunch of fireworks and racing as Boonta Eve is upon everyone and they're celebrating. We get an interesting scene with Pelimoto where she's ripping off some fancy dressed Rodian, and it seems that she's playing the same game with the Jawas that they did to Kenobi in the Kenobi show. This being stealing someone's stuff and then selling it back to them. Mando's here for the droid parts as he needs a droid to go spelunking with him on Mandalore to see if it's actually inhabitable. Does it have breathable air, etc. Now, Peli doesn't have the parts for the droid, but she offers up freaking R5, the astromech. And yeah, this is that same astromech that was the first droid attempted to be sold to Luke and Uncle Owen in A New Hope. He blew his motivator back then and was the butt of the joke, but now he's gonna get a heroic shine. They refit the N1 Starfighter's port for the astromech, gets in there, and they take off to Mandalore. Now, when they get to Mandalore, we see that the entire planet is covered with this crazy high atmosphere storm, and the descent from orbit into the planet was really awesome. The N1 shakes, the instruments inside it flare and glitch. It's a really cool sequence, and they finally emerge from those storm clouds to the planet's surface, and we get some incredible shots of the destruction of the planet, old structures and foundations still there. They land on the planet, get R5 onto the surface, and send him out there to test the air, and R5 is promptly destroyed or taken off of the radar. Din descends into the mines and lower levels of Mandalore. He's attacked by a bunch of crazy creatures that we later find out did live on Mandalore natively. These creatures used to just be out in the outskirts of Mandalore, but have now come into the city. Din ignites the Darksaber, but it's obvious right away that it's still really heavy for him. He hasn't bonded with the weapon and can't really efficiently use it. However, despite that, he does end up making quick work of all of these aliens and retrieving R5. He then confirms that Mandalore actually has breathable air. He and Grogu then descend back into the lower levels, attempting to find the living water. They descend lower and lower until suddenly a crazy mechanical beast comes out of the ground and captures Din. And the design of this creature is fan-freaking-tastic. It's crazy looking, it's creepy looking, it's very big, but then you end up realizing it's actually just a big suit worn by this littler creature. And this creature captures Din, removing his weapons from him. Grogu goes up to try to use the Force and save him, but cannot. The creature notices Grogu. Din Djarin tells Grogu to run and go get Bo-Katan. And Grogu then speed runs, exiting the friggin' mines, taking out one of those creatures like we saw in the trailer, and then flipping into the N1 Starfighter. And the little guy, with the help of R5, goes back to the planet where we last met Bo-Katan. And it's funny because Bo, upon seeing Din Djarin's vehicle again, is super upset. It almost seemed like she was literally going to come out there and start blasting him. But when she realizes that Din Djarin is no longer there and she sees that Grogu looks really concerned, she understands that something went wrong and she decides to help. So then they all get in Bo-Katan's ship, which is friggin' awesome, by the way, and they head off to Mandalore. And this is likely the first time that Bo-Katan has been on Mandalore in a long, long time. And she sees a lot of the things that we just witnessed Din Djarin seeing, but it's a little different for Bo. She truly witnessed Mandalore in its prime, and it's very painful for her to now see what it's become. So Grogu and Bo-Katan descend the lower levels. They end up finding Din Djarin, and they are, of course, attacked by the crazy mechanical beast. Bo-Katan uses the Darksaber, picking it up off of the ground, and we instantly realize she's way better with this weapon than Din Djarin. She handles battles the first stage of the boss before its head pops off and crawls back over to the big behemoth-looking thing. And she even pretty easily handles the second stage of the boss fight. I mean, she's really freaking good with that Darksaber. Now, they freed Din, but he was getting his blood drained, and so he's in this really weakened state when he wakes up. But he's so damn stubborn that he's still committed to getting down there and bathing in the living water. Bo-Katan agrees to take Din to where the living waters are. So they arrive at the living waters. Bo-Katan explains that this used to be the lair of the Mythosaur. Din Djarin's all like, cool story, bro, and begins his descent into the waters for his baptism. And he's promptly sucked down into the water, seemingly being dragged down by some kind of crazy creature. Bo-Katan hops into the living waters, descends, and saves Din Djarin for the second time this episode. And then while she is dragging Din out of the waters, she comes face to face with an actual freaking Mythosaur, and it looks gigantic. And that's how the episode ends. And so overall, I think a really strong episode. I'd put it at an 8.5 out of 10. It's cool to see returning fan favorite characters. Love that R5's getting some shine. Mandalore itself seems incredibly well designed. I love the action between Mando fighting and, of course, Bo fighting. Overall, I think we're off to a really great start for the third season of The Mandalorian. Of course, let me know what you think about the episode in the comment section. But okay, let's talk about the bantha in the room. The fact that this episode heavily foreshadows the fact that Bo-Katan is likely to get that Darksaber back permanently and become the ruler of Mandalore. You see, this episode really does a great job of laying it out for the audience that Din Djarin is still not good with the Darksaber. This is something that's actually established in Book of Boba Fett, but the Darksaber itself is getting heavier and heavier. Din is not one with the blade, and therefore he cannot wield this weapon with ease. This is something that's first established in the Star Wars universe in Star Wars Rebels when Sabine Wren is training with the Darksaber. She first starts training and the Darksaber's really heavy, but it gets lighter as she's going. And Kanan remarks to her that she is becoming one with the blade. And although we don't know for sure, we assume that this lightsaber has a kyber crystal, just like all lightsabers. I mean, of course, the Darksaber is unique and its crystal's likely unique, but it still has a kyber crystal to create this beam of energy. And in the new Star Wars canon, kyber itself has something of a consciousness. It can sing and has its own force waves. So for whatever reason, Din Djarin is not bonding with the kyber that's inside of the Darksaber and therefore cannot effectively wield it. But we see Bo-Katan in this episode take the Darksaber and go John freaking Wick style, going absolutely crazy and wielding it with ease. And wielding it almost like a Jedi. Now when Din Djarin regains consciousness, the Darksaber's still there. All of his weapons are there. Bo hasn't taken the Darksaber from him, and she refuses to take it the same way that she did in Star Wars Rebels, where Sabine Wren gives the saber to Bo. This is a big thread throughout Mandalorian culture, something that the show is emphasizing as well. The armorer has even stated that Bo-Katan's tale is a cautionary tale, and the fact that she took the Darksaber without earning it in combat actually cursed the Mandalorians. But despite all of that, and despite the feelings that many Mandalorians have towards Bo-Katan, this episode makes it obvious that Bo has bonded with that saber. She can wield it really, really well. So yeah, this episode obviously sets it up that Bo is a way better wielder of the Darksaber and Din is not, and so it seems like there's foreshadowing the fact that Bo will get the Darksaber back. But the question is, how will she do this in a way that the entirety of Mandalore will still galvanize behind her? Because currently everybody's not a big fan of Bo, and it seems like the only way she could get the Darksaber back would be to defeat Din Djarin in combat. But she seems unwilling to challenge Din in combat. I mean, this is even established in season 2. It also feels a bit confusing for me because I was under the impression that Din Djarin was on this reluctant hero arc where he was going to get the Darksaber, be forced to figure out how to bond with it, and then use the Darksaber to actually unify all of the different tribes of Mandalore. And Din Djarin and his legacy is clearly building in the galaxy. So I have trouble wrapping my head around how Din could be building his legacy, seemingly getting all of the Mandalorians to come back together as he literally visits the armor and Bo in episode 1, and yet he's not going to end up being the leader and they're all just going to follow Bo. But you see, there's another rumor about something big that's going to happen later on in the season, which could make all of this make sense, and it's actually something that the show has already acknowledged as a possibility. You see, this all has to do with the mythical creature known as the Mythosaur, which Bo happens to come face to freaking face with at the end of the episode. The armor herself refers to old songs talking about how the Mythosaur would herald a new age of Mandalore, but sadly the creature only exists in legend. And you see, there is an established rumor that we will see much more of the Mythosaur later in this season. And to add to that rumor, there's also been discussion of Bo-Katan herself getting a Mythosaur armor. And so after this big tease in episode 2 with Bo being able to wield the Darksaber really, really well, I think what's going to happen is she will refuse to just outright fight Din Djarin for it, but perhaps when all of them are gathered on Mandalore at the behest of Din Djarin, the Mythosaur will pop out and you'll see Bo-Katan either kill the Mythosaur or ride the Mythosaur, and therefore she will be enacting a prophecy that's way stronger than even the prophecy around the Darksaber. Because the Mythosaur represents a new age for Mandalore, perhaps putting the past behind them, including the prophecy of the Darksaber, or at the very least, the side of the prophecy that says you can't just have the Darksaber, that you have to win it in combat. And so you see, it's possible that Din Djarin will play a really important role in bringing all of the Mandalorians together using his own rising legend, but then something truly mythic will happen where the Mythosaur comes out and Bo-Katan, perhaps even using the Darksaber, will either stop the Mythosaur, destroy the Mythosaur, or ride and tame the Mythosaur. And that will be such a big moment that happens in front of all of these different Mandalorians that they will then agree to follow Bo-Katan as the rightful ruler of Mandalore. And I mean, it kind of makes sense because Din Djarin and Baby Yoda, they have a kind of different story going on. You know, they want to learn more about what's going on with Grogu, but really their chemistry and the show, I think, works better when they're just together off doing their own thing. And so what might happen is Din sort of brushes up against an epic big thing for the Mandalorian people, but then also kind of sidesteps the responsibility of being the ruler and therefore gets to just go do his own thing still. And what I initially thought would be really controversial might actually play well with the Star Wars fan base, as many of the people that I've talked to about this idea seem to agree that Bo-Katan would be a way better leader than Din, and it just makes sense for her character. That's what she wants to do, and Din wants nothing to do with leading Mandalore. We'll have to see how it all shakes out, but this was an incredible episode that I think really teases this as not only a possibility, but a strong possibility for the end of the show. So let me know what you think about it. Smash a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and if you want to watch more, why not check out this video I recently did all about major changes that Kevin Feige is making to the MCU.